And welcome back to Bengal Bites, a podcast about the Cincinnati Bengals from one fan's real, honest perspective. I'm your host, Derrick. This is episode 67. This is the Week 10 preview episode where the Bengals are going on the road to Baltimore to take on the Ravens on Thursday night football. This is a primetime matchup. Bengals, right now, their record is 4-5. They're not out of things yet, but the season's, they can't lose too many more games. So they need this one. This is a big divisional game against the Ravens, who are one of the top teams in the AFC. Ravens are 6-3 right now. And Ravens are looking to stay in the lead of the AFC North. I think they're one game behind the Steelers right now. So they're looking to stay dominant because they've lost 3 games, even though they're the number 1 offense in the NFL. Ravens have the number 1 rushing offense, number 2 passing offense, but their defense has been a little bit lackluster. This game could be another shootout. The last time the Bengals and Ravens played was at Paycor Stadium, and it was a 38-41 overtime victory for the Ravens. That was one of the most exciting, entertaining games of the NFL so far this season. So hopefully tonight's game will be a repeat of the entertainment value of that previous game, but with a different outcome. And like we remember, that game was defined by a lot of plays. There was the long touchdown catch and run and touchdown catch by Jamar Chase. There was the botched hold on the field goal attempt from Ryan Rico and Evan McPherson. There was big plays by Lamar Jackson, most notably against Sam Hubbard. But there's a couple of loose ends I want to tie up from last week against that Raiders team that was not very good. A couple of things to mention and give some context that'll go a little bit more towards understanding what's going to happen in this game. So last week, T. Higgins was out, and it's looking like T. Higgins is going to be out for this game against the Ravens too. So that's going to be one of the big storylines, is the injuries as always. So T. Higgins, doubtful. Charlie Jones, also doubtful with a groin injury. Eric All, it was confirmed, tore the ACL in that same right knee. Eric All is on injured reserve. Tight end number 83, rookie. So he's going to be out for the rest of this season on a long rehab for him. Then we also saw Zach Moss, the running back for the Bengals, go on injured reserve as well with a neck injury. He was out late last week after Thursday's practice. Friday he didn't practice. All of a sudden it was the Chase Brown show, and that was great. He had a career high in rushing yards of 120 on 27 carries. Also added 5 catches, 32 total touches for Chase Brown, but he did have a little bit of a rib injury. And we saw that Travion Williams was not effective as a pass blocker. Coming in for Chase Brown, Travion Williams was obviously, he's just not a real NFL player. I know he's been on the team since 2019. He goes all the way back to college at Texas A&M when Zach Taylor was the coach there. But he's just not very good, and they keep putting him in. And so because of that, Zach Moss being out, Travion Williams not being very good, and they don't have any other real options on the roster at running back, Bengals, for only the 3rd time in the 55-year history of the team, did a trade in the season. They have only done it in the most rare occasions. Last time was Carlos Dunlap, who was being very disruptive. He didn't want to be on Zach Taylor's shitty team anymore, so he was like, let me talk my way out of here on Twitter and whatever. And so they finally got fed up and traded him away to the Seattle Seahawks in the middle of the season just to get him out, because he was like posting screenshots of the game plan for the game coming up that week and stuff. It was weird. So or no, he was posting pictures of the depth chart and showing like how his name wasn't at the top of the depth chart. He's like, what's going on here? I'm like a multi Pro Bowl player, but Coach Lou doesn't want to put me in the game or whatever. So it was weird. And then this another situation with Carson Palmer where he was just sitting out, refusing to play for the Bengals anymore. And then in the middle of the season, I think they were the Oakland Raiders at the time. Their quarterback got hurt right before the trade deadline. And so they traded a bunch of picks to the Bengals for Carson Palmer. Those were the only two trades that the Bengals made in the season previously, trading players away. This time, the first time that I'm aware of in the season that they traded away a draft pick for another player. So the Bengals traded with the Chicago Bears to get running back Khalil Herbert in exchange for a 7th round pick next year. And that's totally a fair trade because 7th round pick, yeah, the guy who plays 7th round might end up being a player like Matt Lee this year. He's getting some snaps, so it's not nothing, but they really need a running back for the rest of the season because Chase Brown's not a big guy. He's not great at pass blocking, and neither is Khalil Herbert, but at least Khalil Herbert has some snaps in the NFL. They showed his highlight reel on the Bengals channel, and it's legit. Like, he's got moves, he's got burst, explosive. But the thing is, those highlights are from, a couple years ago, a couple seasons ago. You don't know what he's got now because he's been inactive for the Bears. He hasn't even been playing in their games. I think he's only got maybe 26 yards rushing for the entire season so far. Not a lot of use. I mean, he should have fresh legs at least coming in here. The biggest thing is just taking some of the workload off of Chase Brown so he can survive for the rest of the season. And for the Bengals to have some kind of viable option at running back because it obviously was not Travion Williams. I don't want to keep harping on that, but like I said, they took Travion Williams off of kickoff return and replaced him with Charlie Jones, got immediate benefit against, I was going to say that was the Ravens, but no, that was the Browns game where Charlie Jones has the 100-yard kickoff return. Unfortunately, it's looking like no Charlie Jones because of that groin injury. And so we may see Khalil Herbert returning kicks. That's one of the things on his highlight reel. His first play in the NFL was a kick return. Maybe that's something that can get him involved with in this game because he just got into the facility, into the Bengals stadium on Tuesday afternoon. It's going to be kind of a stretch to imagine he's going to be able to play in the game Thursday night after just getting there, 48 hours beforehand. But returning a kick, just go out there, catch the ball, and run. That doesn't seem too hard. So if he's in shape, we may see a little bit of that. Hopefully we'll see that. But yeah, I don't expect to see Travion Williams on the roster after this season. I'm surprised he's still on the roster at this point. But for some reason, the Bengals, even though they had 10 draft picks, did not draft a single running back and didn't pick up any in free agency, really. And they could have had Derrick Henry, who's on the Ravens and who leads the NFL with, he's already got over 1,000 rushing yards, and it's only week 10. Derrick Henry has 1,052 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns. That's going to be a big challenge for the Bengals defense to stop. Obviously, the Ravens are coming into this game. This is going to be a pivotal game if they can tie an NFL record that they already have. It's going to be for the longest number of games with the team going over 100 rushing yards consecutively. The Ravens have run for at least 100 yards in 42 consecutive games, which is one shy of the record held by the Steelers in the 70s and then the Ravens between 2018 and 2021. So pretty much right after that run, they would have had to started this current run right after their last run ended. So that's going to be, basically 90 games where they had over 100 rushing yards in the game. And Bengals defense has not been great at stopping the run. It's probably going to be a high-scoring game from the Ravens, especially because, speaking of trades, a couple weeks ago, or maybe last week, the Ravens traded for Deontay Johnson, the wide receiver, from the Carolina Panthers, who, when the Carolina Panthers played the Bengals, Deontay Johnson had his career high for receiving yards. He had what was it, 150-something yards? I can't remember. But the most receiving yards in Deontay Johnson's career. So obviously the Bengals had difficulties stopping him. Now he's going to see the Bengals again, this time with Lamar Jackson, who, by the way, just had a perfect passer rating in the game against the Denver Broncos. Last week, Lamar was 16 for 19, 280 yards. I forget, 3 or 4 touchdowns. But the Ravens have not only the number 1 rushing defense, but number 2 in passing. They also have Zay Flowers, their top wide receiver, with 650 yards and 3 touchdowns. So a couple of dangerous receiving options. We haven't seen a lot of Mark Andrews, the tight end. He's still coming back from that injury he suffered against the Bengals last season. But it's looking like Isaiah Likely, the other tight end who scored 2 touchdowns for the Ravens last game, he's probably going to be out he's out for this game. So at least the Bengals won't have to deal with Isaiah Likely on the Ravens. Ravens are also going to be without Brent Urban, defensive end. He had a concussion. And Jalen Armour-Davis, cornerback, is doubtful for the Ravens defense. Ravens did pick up Tre'Davious White, cornerback from the Los Angeles Rams. Veteran cornerback, but he's gotten beaten deep. I think he had an Achilles injury last year, so he's coming back from an injury. Maybe lost half a step here and there. But the Ravens are really not looking good at defensive back. So they needed to get some more depth on their roster, something that some people were hoping the Bengals would be able to do to improve their defense a little bit. People were hoping Bengals could add somebody to the defensive line or cornerback or something like that. But, one trade is all the Bengals could really muster. You can't get greedy. Should be happy that the Bengals even did a trade at all. Like I said, it's so rare. This is the first time they've traded for a player during the season, as far as I know. And so asking for 2 is kind of asking for a lot. They may still be looking around on the waiver wire because at this time of year, teams are still making moves, signing guys, releasing guys. There may be some free agents that become available. You never know, but it's probably going to be this team from here on out. And they got to have to make the best of it. And going back to last week, so since T. Higgins and Charlie Jones, wide receiver, both going to be out, that meant the Bengals were going to rely on Jermaine Burton, rookie wide receiver from Alabama and Georgia and a couple other places, because he had bounced around college. There were a lot of concerns about his character. Everybody said he was a first-round talent, but he got drafted in the 3rd round because of those concerns. And all those came to fruition last week. Zach Taylor said they had to make the decision to basically suspend him for the game. But they made kind of a odd decision where even though Jermaine was suspended, and then we saw some reporters put on social media pictures of Jermaine. So he didn't even show up on Saturday for the walkthrough. Didn't call to let anybody know that he wasn't going to be there. No call, no show for work. Totally unacceptable. And then the next day, Sunday, for the game, he shows up. He's wearing pajama pants and a hoodie in looking like he just rolled out of bed. That's how he's showing up for work the next day after he just didn't show up. Not really a good look. And then he's on the sidelines. You see him laughing, joking, dancing around, and Joe Burrow has got this scowl on his face. It was such a weird juxtaposition because there's a moment where the Bengals, they were up by 3 touchdowns, but Joe Burrow's sitting on the bench, and he's got a real serious, irritated look on his face. And then you see Jermaine Burton kind of dancing and nodding his head, walking right in front of Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's trying to look around Burton like he's not even there. But then there was another moment where Burton was sitting on the bench, probably while the defense was playing or something, but Joe Burrow turned around and said something to Jermaine Burton that made Jermaine Burton get up off the bench and not sit there anymore. And then you could see Joe Burrow shaking his head, saying something about pisses me off. So he wasn't happy, obviously whatever he said to Jermaine Burton wasn't a, hey, buddy, you're doing a great job here. It was more like, you need to get your head out of your ass here, Jermaine Burton, because I know, people make rookie mistakes. Young people making mistakes is how you learn in life. So I don't want to be too hard on the young man, but then he's not helping himself because the next day, Monday, after that game where he already got suspended, then the next day there's a picture somebody took of him sitting by himself at a slot machine at the casino in Cincinnati, wearing the same clothes he had been wearing at the game on Sunday. And so it was obviously him, and it's just not, it's not illegal to be at the casino slot machines by yourself if you're not supposed to be at practice at that time, whatever. You can do whatever you want in your free time, but if the knock on Jermaine Burton has been he wasn't prepared, he wasn't ready to go, I don't think he was getting prepared by sitting at the slot machines at the casino all day. So that is really troubling. Again, we don't know what's going on in Jermaine Burton's life. I don't want to judge him, but they were asking, some of the reporters, they keep asking Joe Burrow what he can do as the leader of the team to fix X issue. They ask him, Joe Burrow, what can you do to fix the defense? Joe Burrow, what can you do? So now they were asking about Jermaine Burton. They're like, Joe Burrow, as the leader of the team, what can you do to help Jermaine Burton? And, he just kind of gave a standard response of, yeah, we're going to do everything to help him, blah, blah, blah. But it shouldn't be up to Joe Burrow to figure out how Jermaine Burton can get out of bed and come to work. That shouldn't be Joe Burrow's responsibility. Like, you think Peyton Manning or Tom Brady or any of these elite quarterbacks is spending their time worried about some guy who can't even figure out how to show up? Of course not. From Joe Burrow's mind, that's not his job. Just like he should, when they're asking about do they think they should make trades or make moves, he said, that's not my job. And he did say that he was happy to see that they made a trade for Khalil Herbert. Joe Burrow said he was happy to see the team making moves to get better. But again, it's not his job to get Jermaine Burton. It's not anybody else's job. They asked the same thing to Jamar Chase. What can he say as a mentor or as a fellow wide receiver? But Jamar Chase, I already talked to him. I'm sure this isn't the first time this has happened. Something like this is probably the reason why Jermaine Burton has not been playing so far this season. They've probably had to talk, multiple talks. They've been beyond the talks, I'm sure. But there's only so much talking that you can do. It's up to the person to figure it out themselves. And whether that happens this season, whether it happens with the Bengals, we don't know. It's not likely that the team would completely give up on him already. Some people are saying, they should just kick him off the team. That's not going to happen. They've already, he's a third-round pick. They've already seen that he's got talent on the field when he's out there. It's just a matter of getting him to mentally commit to being a professional, doing his job. It may not be the wake-up call that he needs, having him sit down last week in the game. Jamar Chase, they asked him in his, now it's becoming a regular press conference with Jamar Chase, which is good because we want to hear not just from Joe Burrow as the spokesperson for the team. And Joe Burrow has even said he's not comfortable in the role necessarily of being the vocal leader of the team. So it's nice to see Jamar Chase, who, like I said, is probably the best player on the team anyway. So it's nice to see him talking. Although there was a moment where they asked Jamar, since it's a Thursday game, short week, is it kind of like cramming for a test? And Jamar, totally straight-faced, deadpan, said, I never studied in school. So Jamar Chase never studied academics, but obviously he's studying football, one would hope. But similar type of situation where he said there was rookie year against the Ravens, he missed a meeting. And that was the game where he went for 200 yards, put the guy in a blender, as Kevin Harlan would say. And they kind of forgave it because of Jamar's performance. But Jamar said that was the lesson that he learned to never be late again. He hasn't been late since then. he said the coaches were like, oh, it's cool after he went for 200 yards and a bunch of touchdowns. But he said he knew it wasn't cool to be showing up late. So he learned his lesson. And hopefully there's another repeat of that type of performance from Jermaine Burton in this game tonight. With T. Higgins being out, they're really going to need it. It would be really great if he was able to contribute, because we haven't seen a ton from the other receivers like Andre Yosivas and Trenton Irwin. Mike Gesicki, the tight end, number 88, has done a good job of filling in that T. Higgins void for the Bengals offense. But the more weapons they can get out there for Joe Burrow, the better. Because we've seen Joe Burrow last game, he was playing at an elite level, one of the best games he's played as a professional, definitely one of his best games of the season. But he was so angry at himself because of that pick six, because it wasn't the perfect game that he envisioned. He could have had more touchdowns. He could have had 6 or 7 touchdowns in this game. So he wasn't satisfied with 5 touchdowns, 1 interception that led to a touchdown. So he had a scowl on his face, shaking his head. He said he could maybe improve his demeanor, his body language, because that can, filter out to the rest of the teammates. You don't want to have the teammates. But he was saying, like, he doesn't want the teammates to just feel satisfied, patting themselves on the back, being like, oh, what a great job we did, guys, when there are things to clean up. They gave up 24 points to the Raiders. So there obviously wasn't the perfect game. They could have done better. I understand that from Joe Burrow's perspective. One of the other things to watch in this game is going to be whether or not left tackle Orlando Brown is able to play. Orlando Brown, originally drafted by these Baltimore Ravens, 2-time Pro Bowler there as a right tackle. He has been in and out of the lineup recently with that left knee calf injury. He's tried to play through it, but had to sit the last couple of games. We'll see. If he's not able to play, it would be Cody Ford at left tackle. Without Eric All blocking at tight end for the Bengals, we're probably going to see more of Drew Sample and Tanner Hudson. And we may see Tanner McLaughlin finally active in a game this season. We haven't seen him at all, so that would be interesting. We'll also have to keep an eye on defensive tackle B.J. Hill, number 92. He had a rib injury that kept him out of most of last week's game, but they said he's been practicing. So it's still possible that B.J. Hill is able to play. We'll have to keep an eye on him, as well as Chase Brown, who had a little bit of a rib injury in that game. So hopefully he is not too worse for the wear. But Bengals offense, if they can keep Joe Burrow protected, and he's been moving around in the pocket, he doesn't have the athleticism of Lamar Jackson. But this will be another entertaining game of the two probably best quarterbacks at moving around in the pocket and not getting sacked when it looks like they're for sure going to get sacked. Both of these guys have made so many amazing plays where we all remember the infamous Sam Hubbard play.
Here comes Hubbard. Oh, he threw him away like a rag doll.
Yeah, that one. So hopefully we don't have any more plays like that, but we want to see Joe Burrow doing his Houdini act, breaking out of 5 tackles, finding somebody for a long touchdown, Jamar Chase down the field. Jamar's down there somewhere. So hopefully we see something like that tonight. But Bengals are heavy underdogs going into this game. They're 6-point underdogs. And if you look at ESPN matchup predictor, it gives the Ravens a 70% chance of winning this game, which is quite high. It's one of the highest. I guess I haven't checked like every game ever. This is the highest for a Bengals game for sure. Bengals have actually been favored in most of their games, but this game they're playing in Baltimore on the road, so it's not a lot of things going in the Bengals' favor. This is going to be a test of this Bengals team, Bengals coaching staff, whether they can get a tough win. This would be the first win of a quality team, a real signature win on the season. So far, they've just kind of beat up on the bad teams. But anytime they've played any good teams, they've gotten beat. So this will be a test. If they can get a win on the road against a top team, this would signal that maybe the Bengals have a chance to not only make it to the playoffs, but also if they get to the playoffs, maybe advance and not just get beat in the first round. But the odds are not going to be in the Bengals' favor because part of the reason is the Ravens under John Harbaugh, head coach, have been very successful in prime time. Ravens are 21-3 in prime time under Coach Harbaugh, and on Thursday Night Football, they are undefeated 8-0. So the Ravens on Thursday Night Football are a tough opponent, and that makes sense because the Ravens are physically one of the biggest, strongest, most physically dominating teams in the NFL. So when you're playing on a short week of rest, the other team, their bodies have not a lot of time to recover from that previous game. And then you got to play up against the biggest, strongest team in the NFL on a short week. It makes sense how the Ravens are just able to use their power, size, and athleticism to just overwhelm other teams. The game plan, they can do whatever they want, but sometimes the players got to make plays, and the Ravens just have so many big, strong guys on the other team. We'll have to see if the Bengals players are able to keep up, and hopefully, knock on wood, they don't have any more serious injuries because the part of the season is the battle of attrition, and it's already starting to take a toll on the Bengals roster. They've had to make this unprecedented trade for help in the running back room, not even an improvement, I wouldn't say. I wouldn't say Khalil Herbert was an improvement over Zach Moss. He's just a replacement. So they didn't get better necessarily. They got better than not having Zach Moss at all, that's for sure. But not necessarily a net gain for the team. But everybody in the league is dealing with injuries. You see, this is not just the Bengals. Every team has to deal with injuries. So it's really going to just be who can have the fewest amount of injuries. We don't want to see any more injuries. What we do want to see is more big plays from Jamar Chase like this.
Jamar Chase touchdown!
Or big plays from my boy. But that's all for this episode. I wanted to come back. I said I was going to do a preview episode, but then I thought, I'm kind of missed my window, so I'm sorry for getting this up late. It's more for posterity's sake. But the worst podcast is the one that is never recorded. A lot of podcasts out there, especially when the team starts losing, they start slacking off on the podcast schedule. They're not as consistent with the schedule. They might skip a week, skip an episode here or there. So this is a short week, but I wanted to get this preview episode out, and then we'll have plenty of time to dissect it after the game. But I'll try to get it up as soon as possible. So who knows, this podcast might be coming up before you know it. So keep watching that feed. Give me a thumbs up, rating, all that kind of stuff. And until next time, I'm going to leave you with a hooday and stay hungry for more Bengal Bites.
Yo, Savash!